Hey everybody, it's Lila here, back with another one. This is August 26th of 2018. You are hands down, bar none, the stupidest fucking person I have ever met. Sometimes I wonder what it would be like to be you. Completely self-oblivious, judgmental, narcissistic. You really are just a terrible human being. I mean, don't get me wrong, you're a shallowly nice person. It's the more intimate you, the you that people get to know after spending a certain amount of time with them that really starts to wear you down. As we are sitting here today, working in our respective areas, you are on Facebook, no doubt. You ask me if I know someone who insert name is. I do, and then you proceed to say that you have just had an exchange with this person on Facebook. You call them dumb, as usual, then explain that you responded to an article they posted, then kept asking why your comments are irrelevant. He obviously doesn't realize that I'm involved with legal stuff. You trail off. I'm going to make myself something to eat. See, that's the thing. I get frustrated and I eat. This is when you insisted that I sit at your computer to read the exchange. Now, this is what's funny is like if he actually ate every time he got frustrated, he would be eating constantly because he's constantly just like a high-strung, unnerved piece of shit. Um, so like that's definitely not true. But the, the funny thing about this, not like funny, but this was not only someone that I knew, this was someone that when I was involved with the politics. Okay, well, this time I just turned the low power mode off, but it happened again, but that's okay. So anyway, as I was saying, so under the Region 2 chair, there were four district chairs. This person was one of my district chairs. So not only did I know this person, it wasn't just in passing. I actually know this person. To the tune that like a year ago, I ran into him at the gym and we had a little like, wow, long time no see kind of a moment. So like I know this person. I liked this person infinitely better than I liked this guy that I was working for. So, I mean, of course, this is a little biased, but at the same time, like, of course, it's a little biased. I mean, this is the person that I like the least in the entire fucking world. So, like, that kind of goes without saying. But anyway, so yeah, so and this thing, he obviously doesn't realize that I'm involved with legal stuff. How would anybody know that? So, like, on his profile, he doesn't even use his real name. He used his real first name, but then not a name last name. He used a like if you were to call her like okay, so actually this is just a perfect example of like Megan the Stallion, right? That it's like imagine that like her name is really Megan, right? But like her last name is obviously not the Stallion. Okay, so like that's the way that he put his name on Facebook. His profile picture was a painting of an animal, right? And not even like a real photo of an animal. It was a drawing, painting, artist rendering, however, of an animal. And then he kept limited information about himself on his profile. So it's like he's like, well, he obviously doesn't know that I'm involved in legal stuff. Like, first of all, like there is no information on your profile that would lead anyone to have that experience about you, right? So, like, obviously, you're right. And then just judging by the way that he writes and talks and stuff, which you're going to get a taste of, I'm pretty sure I copied and pasted this shit. Because obviously, dude was my friend, so all I had to do was go to his page and just rip this. um, no one would draw that conclusion from experience with the things and the way that he posts stuff. Okay, so anywho. Um, I'm going to make myself something to eat. See, that's the thing. I get frustrated and I eat. This is when you insisted that I sit at your computer to read the exchange. I take a deep breath because I already know, based on not just knowing you, but having come across your bizarre, irrelevant rant comments on Facebook before, that you have likely totally embarrassed yourself in a public forum. No wonder you don't use your real name on Facebook. This way you can hide your true identity. I suppose that's a blessing in disguise, as I would hate to be dumb by association. I went to the post on my own Facebook and took screenshots of the exchange. I've copied it below so that I can comment on it for the audience. I can't believe my luck to have such a perfect example of what living with you is like. Now I'm curious. I'm like, did I actually copy and paste it? Yes. Okay. All right. So there's two ways of looking at this, right? Like the fact that he's obfuscating his true identity. On the one hand, there's I just want to have my privacy because I think I'm so important, like, but in general, okay, so we could start with this baseline, like, there's nothing wrong with kind of trying to protect your real self online. So, like, don't get me wrong. Like, let's just put that aside for a second, right? There's the part that's like, I don't want people to know who I truly am because I'm so popular and whatever, and I just don't want people to know. And then there's the other side where you subconsciously know that you're not necessarily taken seriously or seen in the highest esteem, and so you want to hide who you truly are. Because he would go to the in-person hearings and stuff like that, so like he would show his face in these court hearing things and the legislature and stuff like that. So it's like people were familiar with him. And I know this because I asked one of my other like closer, like real like friend type that I know it was the Region 3 chair at the time that I knew through the party, but had plenty conversations otherwise, like I said, as an actual like friend. Um, I finally, like, I snuck a picture of him or something and was able to show him, like, this guy, like, do you know this guy? And he just laughed and he's like, yeah, like, everybody knows that guy, kind of a thing. So I don't want to really be putting words in his mouth, but it was something to that effect, right? Where that it's like, oh, yeah, that's, and then also because I knew his real name. So I could just say, like, this guy, this is what he looks like. And he's like, yeah, people are familiar with him. Anyway, okay, you get the gist. Um, You cannot be provoked either way. If someone compliments you or you compliment yourself, the gushing fountain flows on way too long. If someone doesn't agree with you or, heaven forbid, attempts to offer constructive criticism or even just implies that they don't understand where you're going with something, you will assert your perspective to an exhausting degree. You insist that you make sense, and oftentimes you simply don't. I'm not even going to recount the election precinct slash absentee ballot conversation because it hurts too much to relive your stupidity. Maybe another time because it was pretty fucking brilliantly stupid. The sheer amount of effort it takes to have even a basic intelligent conversation with you is astounding. So if I remember correctly, that was the conversation of he didn't want to have to walk all the way down to the polling place to vote on election day. So he was asking me about like, how do I go about getting an absentee ballot? And I was trying to explain to him that you have to get those in advance because like election day is like last call. Like your only option now is to go to the polling place to vote. And he's like, no, but there are these things called absentee ballots. They'll like mail you one. And it's like, right. And they still like the deadline to have everything turned in is election day. Like how is it possible that someone that can't grasp something this simple has come to believe they're actually very smart? Right? I can't, it's impossible to understand. It's like the only conclusion to draw is either people were lying to him throughout his life or that's actually part of his mental illness. Is he just believes sight unseen and with all evidence to the contrary and no evidence in support that this is the way things are. And yeah, not really sure what to make of that. It is truly amazing that you have lived almost 65 years and are still oblivious to this fact about yourself. Here's an example just for shits and giggles before I hammer your Facebook commentary that sums up a lot about you. We just made it through Hurricane Lane. There was a lot of wind. It was 3 days before you noticed the whistling and the door rattling, but it's whatever. And it didn't seem like much rain. From the window of the apartment, there is a clear view of an intersection that floods incredibly bad. Usually, watching the cars drive through the flood is how we know from upstairs how hard it's actually raining. There was probably enough rain to be frustrating on the ground, though. This is why I thought you'd find this joke funny. One of my friends on Facebook posted a status asking whether or not the city cleaned storm drains before the hurricane because they seem to be working much better. That's the joke. Another friend responded with a thanks for noticing affirmation, a renunciation of the supposed sarcasm one would read into the status post. When I told you this, however, you started to laugh along with me, then said, what a bunch of stupids. Eh? Right? Bonky face. Right? Because he doesn't understand the joke. He presumes because he thinks that he's correctly making fun of other people's intelligence all the time, that we share a similar sense of humor, and that the reason that I would think that that was funny was because I was laughing at how stupid they were. The alternative is that he just thinks that stupid generally applies to anything that he finds funny, which is kind of stupid. Um, yeah. He doesn't mean funny stupid. He means stupid stupid because he doesn't get the joke. I might delve into this deeper at another point, but suffice it for now to be an example of what happens when you try to give him the credit he believes he deserves. Right? So you try to treat him like a normal person with a normal sense of humor and an open and a understanding of the world and all of this stuff like that he would get the joke and it just he doesn't even begin to understand the words that come out of your mouth. The original post is an article that Bill Perrone wrote regarding a resolution presented by the Democratic Party to publicly fund elections. Basically, a certain amount of taxpayer money would be set aside and then divided among candidates for positions so that elections aren't won by the person who spends the most money. And the article, Bill states several examples from the recent primary election, including the gubernatorial election in which David Ige was the incumbent. You marked the post as angry. So an angry react to the post. So the post, like I said, right, just to be a little bit more clear, was that just this idea that it's like if we want to take money out of politics, why don't we just make running for election? So currently, what happens is like I want to say this is for a state representative and maybe for state senate as well. You have like a petition where you need a certain number of signatures. It's either 10 or 100. And like it's like $1,000 filing fee. And then from there you campaign and spend all the money and do whatever you want, basically, right? Within the law. You sign wave and you put out t-shirts and you do what you do, right? Put up signs, etc. So the idea was that kind of like instead of having this barrier with this filing fee and stuff, why don't we just set aside a certain amount of money and make taxpayers basically pay for people to be able to run for office, but that's all the money the candidates can spend. And so that if you can go out and get 100 signatures of people saying that they would vote for you to be their state congressperson, right? There could be 20 people running in the election. And if there was only $1,000 allocated to you guys being running, everybody would only get like $50, right? Um, to be able to spend, and that's what you're capped at spending, so that there would then be a reason for it. There would be a competitive advantage in just getting other people interested to not even vote or to not even run either, and stop with all of these like random names on the ballot just because somebody was bored and had $1,000 lying around, because that happens a lot, it seems, just in elections and stuff in general. So, but like I said, this was a long time ago, so I don't necessarily remember all of the details, but just for the sake of argument, that isn't what's important here at all. Okay. So, like I said, in the article, Bill states several examples from the recent primary election, including the gubernatorial election in which David Ige was the incumbent. You marked the post as angry. So I want to say, I'm like feeling like I'm having a brain fart right now, but the incumbent is able to just run again regardless. They don't have a primary election to begin with. So but then again, like I said, I don't remember. I don't know. Some of those things I just don't pay that much attention. All I know is like that the lieutenant governor is a completely separate race. So like we don't have a dual ticket. I think there are some states that do. So, but you know how like there's president and vice president and they run together on a single ticket. Here, the governor is one position and the lieutenant governor, like the vice governor, is an entirely different position that just also comes with if something were to happen to the governor, you'd be governor now. And that's it, right? And so the people, like the person who's the governor and the person who's the lieutenant governor, could be completely like diametrically opposed to each other in every possible fucking way, right? It would be like imagine if Donald Trump won the presidency, but Kamala Harris is still vice president, right? It's like that's the sort of thing that can happen here. But like I said, I don't think all states do it that way. That's one of those things that states get to decide for themselves. But for what it's worth, I believe that what was going on here as well was that the primary election didn't even apply to David Ige. Okay. That's so because I can't imagine why else I would have necessarily specifically mentioned that, but I guess we'll find out. Oh, and that's the end. All right. You. Just to let y'all know, Ige will give you false information because he and his girlfriend Harry Kim is conjuring up a plan, get 25 million for disaster and get 680 from the federal for repairs, which will be given to contractors or unions with a backroom deal they support with that money his campaign contribution as charity. Dot 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 LOL. Bill, relevance to post? You, Bill Perone, just recently posted by the media, press, etc. Ige Kim announced they had secured 25 million on Fed disaster funding. Right after that, a week later, they announced they wanted 680 million, and then it dropped to 670 million because they know the amount would have to be clarified by the state. Second, part of this is Ige announced his campaign at the same time being supported by the unions. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to see through the entire transparency of what may transpire. Contract from the unions to do repair work versus outside contracts to part of the work billing the state/county, where you can imagine the paperwork being undisclosed in the amount of cost. How does that figure? Same ethics in the rail, a no-brainer. Okay, again, what does that have to do with publicly financed elections? You, Bill Perone, I agree to the fact of having it based on what I just commented on. We need to clear transparency from corruption. Bill just said, okay. You see how this is an example of like when you realize that you're trying to have a conversation with somebody that really doesn't grasp any of what's going on and what is saying. This is 100% copy pasted directly from Facebook. This is exactly as he wrote it, right? Who in their right mind would take this seriously, right? Like, even if you assume that what he's saying is true, right? These two people are in bed together. Ige and Kim are in bed together to conjure up a plan to get a bunch of money for disaster relief and then for the repairs, and then they'll give it to their own contractors or union buddies in a backroom deal that they support with that money, his campaign contribution as charity. So like they're gonna get federal funds, launder it like for doing a certain building project. This is not an unnormal thing here, okay? This is Hawaii 101, okay? So you get federal money to like grant for like your nonprofit or for this disaster relief or rebuilding something or infrastructure project, et cetera, or like the one that our Congressman Case just announced that they're giving like $500,000 to HPD to upgrade certain training programs and stuff. And then what they do is, this might actually make a perfect example, with something like $417,000 they're going to give to the Honolulu Police Department for training of some program, it doesn't really matter. Then what they'll do with that money is they'll hire their uncle, cousin's neighbor's brother to do this work, offer them a $250,000 salary for the next 2 years to do this, and then the rest of the funds were supposed to be allocated, like buying new computers or the materials, whatever, blah 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 blah. We'll pay you $250,000 to be the person over the next 2 years that does this special training for all of these police officers, with the understanding that you will then contribute $50,000 to the current governor's reelection campaign. And I don't want to throw Doc Josh under the bus, and I'm not going to there, but that's the example, right? That we'll secure these funds for you, because I'm not going to throw Ed under the bus either. But um, but basically that's the gist of what the allegations are that goes on, and it does go on quite a bit, but it's more localized, right? That it's like your brother's uncle's cousin's contract company is the one that they're going to hire to build this new building, and with the understanding that the state's going to give them this money, but wink, wink, nudge, nudge, and then you're going to go ahead and like donate largely to my campaign, right? This is corruption 101. It's so basic, it's so base level, and it's so obvious. And yeah, it is what it is. So this is where things get kind of dicey, right? Is it like the stuff that he's talking about here isn't necessarily untrue. It's just irrelevant and completely out of scope. And an attempt to just have he wants people to think that he's just on the pulse of some stuff, but like everybody's on this pulse. Like everybody knows that this goes on here, and that it's not exciting or interesting that you have noticed this too, right? It's like we've all noticed. Like, remember like the story that I told in the last one about that Reddit Am I the Ass? Okay, on that note, just because. my phone actually then just naturally died because I haven't been doing anything and I've just been ranting and rambling on after the fact. I'm going to go ahead and call it good there. I think everybody gets where I'm going with this. That you can notice things in your environment, but if everybody else is noticing them and you try to talk about the fact that it's like the emperor has no clothes, the emperor has no clothes, the emperor has no clothes. But it's like the opposite, right? That it's like everybody knows and everybody's keeping their mouth shut. But if the emperor went out and everybody just busts out laughing and pointing, right? It's like everybody's laughing and pointing, and he's standing there trying to grab the microphone to tell everybody that the emperor has. No, everybody, stop laughing and pointing. The emperor has no clothes. Have you seen that? Like, well, yeah, everybody's seen it. Okay. So that being said, um, that's the best place to stop because we're done. All right. I will see you all in the next one. Bye.